Hello, 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 everyone. It's Cheryl. Welcome back to Heirloom Afternoon. We are live through the power of the internet. It is Tuesday at noon, and that means we are here doing the Heirloom Afternoon show. I have to first off say, I am really sorry for the technical issues that we had last week. Unfortunately, there were some connectivity issues between the software that I use to do these fabulous shows, and that created a lot of really blurry and very pixelated video, which was not at all how I wanted this to look. So I apologize for that. Hopefully, you are seeing this a lot better than we did back last week. So we are going to cover just a slight bit of original ground from last week. This week, don't forget that you can always catch our shows on Tuesdays at 12 noon. So be sure to bookmark and like or subscribe to us here on YouTube and on Facebook. And we should be a-okay to go from here on out, show-wise, technology-wise. And like I said, so much for the fun technical issues from last week. So we're going to do a little bit of what we did last week, this week, just so that we have that covered. The other thing that's going on as a housekeeping issue is our lights. We have had a really frustrating time with our new light setup. And as a matter of fact, one and both lights failed, and we have to send them back to the manufacturer. So it has been a comedy of errors in order for us to have the most perfect show. And that's just where we're at right now. So that's why we've got some strange lighting going on in this situation. So I do want to show real quick. We've got Quilt Cam, and it shows the beautiful quilt here. Actually, it's in reverse, so I'm going to flip that around, and and we're going to take that down, and we're going to flip it because it is mirrored, and I don't like that. I want you to see the writing here in full the correct way. So this quilt, we're still thinking that this quilt is a memorial quilt or a comfort quilt that was made in just after 1924. These blocks have all been embroidered, and they have the names of people who lived near Pekin, Illinois. And the Pekin, Illinois area, there was a young man who was born in 1894 and died in 1924. And it is my belief that this quilt and a companion quilt, which I have both of, this quilt has been is a comfort quilt, and I believe that this quilt was made by the community to give to the family of the young man who died. So I have looked at some of the names on this quilt and found that they were a prominent family in the Pekin, Illinois area. And it's very difficult to find out who it was for unless you look for the birth and the death dates. And there happens to only be one person who fits that description. So these two quilts, I do believe, were made as a memorial to that young person and also given to the family. So that is the quilt on Quilt Cam. And so hopefully you really enjoy that. So my friends, we've got this really incredible technique that I have been doing some research on. Now, this little sample is still filthy and dirty, and I am going to wash it. And this white should come out as bright as you see it here on the back. So this small Tuftwork, Stumpwork, it's also called, and I'm going to bring over the camera so that you guys get a closer look at this today without it being so and actually I'm going to hide that really quickly because apparently there's a mirror camera issue. There we go. That's the correct way. So now you're seeing it right side up, and we have I've been so interested in this technique. And if you do look in between here, you can see that the way this has been stitched was over the top of a template of sorts. And that template was something that you could get in the 1800s through the early 1920s. And these templates, if you look, they fit just perfectly in there. And these templates are called Kay's Embroiderer, Kay, Kay's Embroiderer. And this particular one appears to have been a homemade template that you can see has like a very strange nail or something made in the middle there. But they all fold up very, very, very small. And then, what I love is about this one, this homemade one, is that you can see the ridge where these have been tin snipped and cut out, and that raised lip from the scissor that was used to create this. So you would fold out your template like so, and then if you look here, if you place it, it fits just perfectly in there. So we do know that a template like this was made to create this stump work, this technique. Now, again, you can see from the back here how it was stitched. And then this template would have been inside these this area that's been stitched over. And then in order to get it out, you would have snipped along with your scissors. You would have taken your scissors and just come in and cut along this stitched edge. So last week I went to, didn't mean to hit the I went to Benzies, which is a felt company, and they carry this tapestry wool. This is 100% wool, and this tapestry wool I decided would be a good test for how to do this technique. So last week I took one of the Kay's embroiderers, these ninja looking stars, and I started the process of stitching over it. Now, I did have to go and find myself a rather large embroidery needle, or in this case, a tapestry needle, because I needed to be able to get the everything through that gigantic eye. The wool is very thick. It's very much like a yarn. And this is going to cause or create this beautiful tufting, this volume and height that we're trying to get from this particular technique. And how this is done is you start by securing the template in the center through a few of these stitches that come through the center. And then that holds the template in place. And then you stitch over each of these petals, and you do it in multiple colors. And that's how you get these pretty awesome colors to appear in the final product. So last week I started that, and I know that the video was very grainy and very difficult to see, and I apologize for that. But we are going to start today with the second round, and you are going to get a look at how this is stitched. So I'm just cutting myself a length of the tapestry wool, and I am using that to thread this giant needle, and we've got that set. And what you must do for this technique is create a knot on the back. And you don't want the knot to be like too big, but you also need it to be secure enough that it's not going to pop out of the back. Now let's take a look at my stitches on the back. And even in last week's episode, if you look at how this is done on the original, you can see that where you come down to the back is where you go back up at that same position. And I missed one. This was a technique that is meant to use up small bits of yarn, small bits of thread, small bits of anything that you might have. So you want to be as economical as possible here on the back. And so if you go back and forth across the back like you do the front, you do not get a you're not being as economical as you can be with the thread. So we're going to go ahead and start here on the back, and we're going to come up and we're going to do layers over the middle. And what we're trying to do now is to add an additional color. And from everything that I can see from examples and what I can figure out from my my own sample that I purchased, is that the way that this is done in these layers is how you get all of that beautiful layering in the colors. Now, this is really difficult sometimes to figure out like where your needle is, and I can feel it poking that metal inside there, and that makes it really difficult for me to keep coming up and down in the same spot. And we're adding this different color so that we get a new these layers that as they're cut, they spread out and lay down flat. So then this outer layer, which will be the longest layer, that outer layer has been built up over all of this these layers, and that's how you get the different colors. So I'm doing this with like a hot pink, and then I'm going to my final layer will be white. And so we're kind of doing a little bit of the reverse of this, where the white is in the middle. But the way to get the center puff is and it is sometimes very difficult to pull. The way to get the center puff is to do this center piece. So that center circle puff right there comes from going around and down into this center piece. This has been really interesting for me to research because some of the things that I found was that this was an extremely popular thing in the late 1800s. And so this was a very popular German, you know, type of embroidery. So it's often called German Tuftwork. It, because of the German immigration to Pennsylvania, a lot of the the Amish, the German descendants of the Amish, continued it, and it stayed popular into the 1920s and 30s. And then this type of embroidery pretty much disappears. And so if you find Amish stump work, it's often, pre 1930, or 1930 or older. And they did make blankets and other wool coverlets out of this type of embroidery. And I am calling it an embroidery technique because it is essentially an embroidery technique. And I don't believe that you would need a, that went right into the same hole and actually pulled out. So let's do that one again. This would have been a pastime for, young people, old people. I think it could be for anyone really, but a lot of it is because you are using up small scraps of yarn that you would have used to make your sweaters, your scarves, your other knitted or crocheted items. And then this is a great way to use small leftovers of that yarn. So I think that that's where the thriftiness comes in, and we get these small embroideries that really do use up a lot of scraps. And I love having something thrifty like that. And of course, in the 1920s, that would have been a very popular thing to do. So, in reading a lot about this, a lot of these tools, these metal tools that I'm using, they seem to be primarily sold overseas. So this Kay's embroiderer, if you try to find this as an heirloom sewing tool that you want to, have in your collection, a lot of that is going to end up coming from the UK. And my copy ended up coming from the UK. So, so this has been, and I'm just like, I still can't find there it is. I'm like trying to find the spot to come back up. And a lot of that is like so much trial and error. Trying to find the right spot to come up from the back. And that is a lot harder to me than it looks, especially because you're not really turning it over to see the back. You're just trying to get a good sense of where you can go in and out. And I did read that, this hole in the middle would become very difficult to continue to press more yarn through, that this centerpiece would end up having a lot of it would gather and get full very quickly, and it does seem to be doing that. I really think that last layer is going to be really difficult to push up and down through that spot. So okay, so we are now ready to do our second layer on one of these petals. And I do have this in an embroidery hoop just to keep my stitches straight. But after working with this a short amount of time, I do feel like I could do this without any support of the embroidery hoop. So that's just your mileage may vary. So in my research on this technique, one of the things that I have found is that this was often turned into patches. So this small section would have been like trimmed away or worked on a small scrap. And then it would have been turned into like a blanket by stitching the individual squares together. Also, if your tufting was on a larger star, and there is quite a big star available in the K's Embroiderer, if you did it with this very large template, you could use this with all of its very dimensional height. You could use that as almost like a pin cushion. So sometimes these are sold as pin cushions. So you if you're looking for examples, you could look up a Stumpwork or a Tuftwork pin cushion. Now, I am trying very hard to come up either in or as close to the previous layer in that hole as much as I can. And the reason is when you look at the example, they are somewhat next to each other, but in a lot of ways, that first layer and that second layer, they seem right next to each other, if not on top of one another. And I believe that that is also what gives this technique its height and its ability to stay tufted in the finished work. So if you end up coming either through the previous hole or right directly next to it, if you can, what happens is there's so much volume of the template of the stitches in the same hole, they sort of keep each other from being able to be pulled out. And that will also create some of that that height. So I'm also not pulling these like super tight and packing them down, because we do want the piece to have some loft. We don't want these stitches to if we pull them like super tight against the template, then what will happen is they won't have as much volume as this original piece. So if you look here on the original piece, if we were to like imagine all of these closed up and back stitched together, you can get the sense that there's not a lot of tension, but you can see the length in the top stitches, but also they spread out here on the bottom. So we're not trying to pull tight, but we're also not trying to make them too loose either. It's sort of like, what is it, the Goldilocks type thing. Like you want it to be just right. And where you can, you want to come up through the template, but I also want to cover, as much as the original, the first layer as possible. I don't want to, I'm not trying to make, if I can see it, that's okay. this is my very first attempt at this, so it's an experiment, right? I'm also not trying to bend the template. Earlier when I was doing the final row or the final petals of the darker pink, and I was doing that last night, I found that I had sort of like a death grip on this piece, and that death grip was causing these the template to be bent, and I don't want that. I don't want to bend the template out of shape. So in that way, having it on an embroidery hoop is helping with that. But this is it's pretty much straightforward. You're just trying to go in and out of the same spots and cover up the previous layer. And I'm also trying not to make them too crooked. And we're getting down to the very end here of this particular petal. So again, this is truly an experiment. I have never done this before. I have no examples of this to show you. And I am trying it here with you. And so your my mileage and your mileage may vary depending. I do want to actually cover that stitch. So I'm going to go backwards one in order to get that little piece covered up. And we're getting down here to the very end. And this nub here at the end has been very difficult for me to cover. As a matter of fact, you can see the point of the template sticking out here and here. Underneath there is a stitch. And I have been trying to sort of lift it back up and put it back over the template, because I know when I need to go and trim this out and actually cut the stitches, that is, it may be a point of contention where trying to get the stitch out of there might be a little difficult. So the other thing I don't know in this whole process is how many layers and how many stitches I need to do. So I think that, in my mind, right, one layer of each of this this wool should be enough. And I'm just going to trim that other piece down a little bit. It should be enough, but I'm not sure. And so that to me will be a bit of experimentation on this piece. I don't know that 2 layers is what they did. To me, it's possible that they did more than 1 layer of the white, just based on looking at the number of stitches I see. So I can see probably that the red was 1 layer, the green was 1 layer, but it's possible that the white was more than 1 layer. So we will see when it is closer to finished. So, and then, on the next row, I am feeling under here. You can see my little finger there. I'm trying to feel like which side the knot is on so that I can choose the opposite side for the next knot. And that's just so that I'm trying to keep myself from stitching through other knots, just as a matter of convenience. And then this is also, again, where I have been on the last piece that I did here, the dark pink layer. I was very thrifty with my All right, I just got to find where the needle needs to come up for a second. There we go. I was very thrifty with using my my threads. So here I'm using a piece that's probably under 6 inches. And, normally when I teach heirloom sewing and things like that, I tell you, cut yourself a longer piece of thread. You're worth it. That they're still making thread, and it's true. They are still making tufting wool. You're not going to run out. But I am also trying to imagine that since this was a craft, so to speak, to use up bits of wool that you would have used. I'm trying to be thrifty about it, and I'm trying not to I'm trying to use like the best my best judgment when it comes to like how much I want to get to that last bit on your needle, right? Because you know how hard it is to go up and down into fabric with that. You can say like, oh, I've at least got 2 more stitches on this needle, right? Like, and I'm that person too. But normally lately I have been saying, no, it is just frustrating, as a sewist to try to sew with that tiny, small amount on your needle. But in this case, I can get 1 more, maybe 2 out of this. And so I will try to get at least this last stitch before I knot it. And if you are worried that you only need to knot at the beginning and the ends, you can look and see they did not do that on this. There's knots halfway through the petal. So this is not not trying to use a pun there, it is not a sacrosanct thing to use a knot halfway through. All right, so and you can see I've done that here and there. So we're just going to tie this one and get ourselves a new length. And so, right, like I said, I'm trying to be thrifty, but on the other hand, right, I'm using a brand new skein of wool. So, but like I feel like this is a better scrap representation than not using I guess you know what I mean. I'm trying to be better about the amount of waste, at least for this project. If it were hand sewing, binding, needlework, embroidery, heirloom sewing, smocking, I would say, girl, go get yourself a longer piece of thread. Like, fighting with all of that is not a good idea. And so that's just my opinion on that. Now this new set, again, I feel like is coming together a little bit nicer and laying a little bit more flatter and a lot closer than the other one. And so maybe I'm just taking more care. I don't know, but it does seem to be looking a little nicer than the first petal. So, that's what this learning experience is all about. And I feel like we don't give ourselves enough time or credit to be a beginner. Like, because what we think of, right, usually, and I could feel myself going down into the previous knot. So I'm just going to move the knot out of the way with my finger underneath. We don't give ourselves enough credit to be a beginner. We see finished works. We see the quilt on the pattern cover or the clothing in the example, and we assume that, those of us who are new at this, it has to come out and look just like that. And, that person is probably, been doing this a lot longer than us. And, while you can have a lot of success, I think a lot of times we get mad at ourselves for not being an instant expert. And that, quite frankly, sometimes just drives people away from various techniques and hobbies, because you tried it and it didn't work out, or it didn't look the way it was supposed to, and you're mad at yourself, and so you end up giving up. And I'm here to tell you that it's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to be a beginner at something, and for that particular work to not look that great. My first quilt has got to be one of the ugliest things on the planet. And I mean, it's hideous. It's really bad. And I love it. And it's used and loved in this house. And, because, not just because it was my first, but because it was also like, it's hideous. You are allowed to make hideous things. And it's okay that your attempts are not always, perfect, and that's okay. So this one is coming out a little bit better than the last one. And I can't like sit here and beat myself up that this particular petal does not look as good as that petal. I just have to, move on and learn and say, well, I'm still learning how to get this done. So, that's one of the biggest takeaways that I have from learning all these new techniques and researching all of this stuff. It allows me to be a beginner again, and to be someone who is at the beginning of a journey. And I kind of like that. I do know that it's hard. It's hard to learn. It's hard to be great at something out of the gate. And I never considered myself a great embroiderer, so this is definitely one of those processes for me. I guess I'm gonna learn one way or the other on how to do this this whole thing. So once again, that very last one, I'm just going to take my finger and sort of lift it a little bit, because I don't want to pull it tight down to the surface of the background fabric. And the reason for that is I do need to get in there to be able to cut through these layers. So I am going to, oh, and it looks like my previous knot fell out. How interesting. Okay, so I can try to capture that with this knot, and that will help sort of lock that piece in place. I don't want either of those to come out. So I know that as we make additional stitches, we're going to end up going into some of these knots, and that's going to be really, really tough. So I'm just going to double check our content here to make sure that we're still streaming well. And it's looking good. I want to always make sure that, things are not broken looking.
I know that
there we go. Yeah. So last week when everything went on the fritz, and really the show did not start to unpixelate until after I got to the end. And that was really frustrating. I was like, wait a minute. Like, and I had no idea during the broadcast that it looked so terrible. And that was really frustrating, for me, because I really, I care, because you guys need to be able to see the stitches here, when we're doing a technique that is new. And it's new to me, I mean, at least, and it's something that we're trying to, investigate. It's important that these stitches be seen so that you can see the process. So that really frustrated me last week when we had so many tech issues, and then the software said we couldn't broadcast to Facebook, and that just meant like all my Facebook followers couldn't watch. So it's been a trial and error on many fronts. So, but you can see how quick this little process is. I'm sure I could be stitching a lot faster. This also, to me, feels like a great type of embroidery that you could do with friends, and because you can talk, and you can put your stitching down, and you can talk or watch TV, and then pick it back up and know exactly where you need to stitch next. It's very portable, and I have it in this giant hoop that's easily like 12 to 14 inches wide. I don't think that I need this much embroidery hoop space. So you could probably get away with a 7 or an 8-inch hoop here, making this project really portable. And I just, think that some of these techniques are really neat, because I just don't like to have loose touch with some of them. And this was one, as I had said in last week's video, I had never seen this before. And what I had done was I was Googling unusual sewing techniques. All right. And sometimes that's just funny in itself, right? You just put it in and you get like unusual, weird stuff. And that was what I was hoping. I was hoping I'd find something I'd never heard of before. And I had never heard of this before. So I started doing the research. And then, as you know, I am reading several books on the history of needlework tools. And I found in my friend, I say my friend, but that's just because we're Facebook pals, Dawn Ronigan has a book called Antique American Needlework Tools. Now, what's funny is that these tools are on the literal last page of the book. Last page. And there's the exact templates, and it's called Plushwork and Star Templates. And, here it says it remained popular with the Amish through the 1930s. And they use these on wool quilts, pincushions, and pillows. And they also used it in needlework canvas. And as soon as I read that, I thought, I think I have something that is made this way. And I sat there and I thought, it would be a miracle if I did actually have it. And I have a vintage linen closet. So not very many people have a linen closet. Very few people have a vintage linen closet. And so I went into my quite literal vintage linen closet to find this pillow, and there it was. And it's fantastic. Now it is also really dirty, and I don't know how I would clean that pillow. It's completely enclosed, and I do believe, what is it in here? It feels like some kind of wool stuffing or something in it. So that makes it, a little complicated. But it is a very unusual pillow, but you can find that design and those pillows on eBay and Etsy sometimes and things like that. So, it just depends on where, do you want the original, sort of the original garment or the original object, or do you want to make your own? And people's mileage may vary. So, okay. So here I'm just going to do that one little top stitch, that tiny bit that goes over the tip of this star template, and then we're ready to knot this. I also think this is the last of this particular. Ooh, I did it again. I went across. I didn't think I had. Huh. Well, it goes to show you. So, yeah, it's a lot harder. Oops. The needle was not long enough to do the knot. It's a lot harder to not go across the back than it looks. Like in my first, my very first attempt at this, I really was like, yeah, if you go across the back, you're just using up more thread. But you can start to see that I'm getting very long pieces from the various knots, and they are fraying and coming out a bit. Like this knot has come undone. So we're going to have to hope that the plushness of the thread keeps the stitches in place. And my understanding is that is how it works in the original. So, there's that. But yeah, so Dawn's book was fantastic in helping me start to identify the tools. And I do have an Amish version of the template, and I'll be bringing that on the next episode, which will be the one that will wrap up this technique. But it's just my understanding is that the wool itself, as it puffs out, as it fluffs, keeps the stitches in place and from pulling out. So that should help me keep some of this work in place. The one thing that I have been looking at these templates very closely, and I haven't seen as a as an issue yet, but it would be something for me to be careful or take care, and that is to not scratch my templates. And if I look at the vintage ones, you do see that they have scratches along the template, and that would be from the tip of your scissors going down and getting under all of the stitches. And so this was a very interesting thing, because I'm like, well, I'm using this one and it feels very new, and it doesn't look like it's ever been used. This one may have been, because you can see sort of one scratch along the side of it. But these older ones, the ones that have been around a lot longer, you can see the scratches on them where the scissor has come down and scratched the template. So that to me made me feel a little bit better about using this in that way. This one, again, being much older, I think a lot of the damage to it is more from scraping them together, pushing these petals together. Now, I have also been looking for a version of the K's Embroiderer with the directions included, and I have not yet found a set with the directions included. And there were paper directions that came with the template, the set of templates, and that set of directions did have some designs that you could employ with the template. And so I was a little curious as to what they suggested you use the Stumpwork with and for. And one of them, the templates suggested that you just use the top portion of the template and you use the three bottom pieces, or you leave off the bottom pieces, and then you use these smaller templates, these individual things to create leaves and stems and things like that, or you create a stem with a chain stitch or other large embroidery stitch, and then use these as leaves for this tulip shape flower. Another one was to use these circles in which you embroider. And I thought, like, wow, that circle is quite wide, right? So it's not a typical washer. And that is so that, unlike here, where you're getting all of the stitches super tightly packed in a tiny hole, you have a much broader hole. This will create a very tufty, round button shape. And I think that would be a lot of fun to also put out here on this little background. So, I think that, there's some shapes that were common, the star being the most popular. And then they had also like little flower motifs that you could also do with this same template. So I think that will be a lot of fun to also try on this piece. And gosh knows I have really overdid it when I bought all of the wool. Now, if you are interested in getting some of this wool, my friends at Benzies is where I picked up this tapestry wool. And the tapestry wool is very inexpensive per skein. And I can tell you, I've already done the pink layer, and this is how much is left over. So I will easily have enough for another one. So it's a very inexpensive thing to try, except for the templates. I spent a lot of money on the template because I was just so interested in trying it with the vintage ones. And there is no modern equivalent right now. That being said, if you really wanted to try this, you could, cut a star shape of your own and just get the tapestry wool. I think they were $1.30 per skein, and Benzies does carry the entire collection and all of the colors, and so that is a great thing for whatever you would want to try. I'm doing this with 3 colors, and so you would only need to pick up like 3 skeins, and that will get you started. So they have been great in order for me to also get a piece of wool as the background. So that is where you can pick up some of these tools. I may or may not be able to include this in our next heirloom sewing box of the quarter. Our boxes used to be by the month, and now they are by the quarter. And we have yet to announce our very first one, but we will be announcing it very soon. And this could be one of the things that we could include with that very first box, so that you could try this technique at home. But yeah, so it has been quite fun. And I see here, just in this time, even though I'm talking and I could probably pay more attention to my project, you can see it goes pretty quickly. So being very portable, being very quick to do, I those are the most satisfying types of little projects, because you get done and you feel like you have accomplished something, right? And so that to me has been like a lot of fun doing this little project here. And I'm just about here at the end, about two more stitches or so, and then I will be able to turn that knot. But this is, I think, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and finish the pink, and on the and do the white layer as well. And then next week, when I come onto the show, we will be ready to cut. And I'll also work up the circle so that we can cut that and get a sense of how that works. So that we will end up having the 3 layers. We'll have the white as the last layer, and next week we'll cut and we'll see how it comes out. And also, I'm going to finally launder said dirty example. So we will be able to see how these come out in next week's episode. And I'm so excited. I can't wait to see how it comes out. So my friends, be sure to check out our website. We always have more new stuff. We have some new patterns available for vintage salt cellars. I know you're going to want to check that out. It has been a wonderful time hanging out with you today, and I hope you have a wonderful week ahead, and I will see all of you next Tuesday. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe.